Hi, good evening, everyone. This is great to see such participation in this effort. When this effort started, how long have we started this effort? Since August, possibly?
The spring, last spring.
Okay. It's great to see the amount of community engagement. There's an online survey that's being conducted. It closes tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I urge everyone to participate. It's not a very lengthy study, and we want your input. I'm glad to hear people from the planning. Catherine Kent has been leading this effort, and I'm going to turn you over to her. She's done a great job so far. We've gotten over 1,100 responses from the survey, which is, by the way, as a researcher, that's unusual. You're a researcher also. That's very unusual when you do such a this type of study. You don't have that much participation. And I thank you again. It's a rainy day, in the middle of the week, day before Valentine's Day, and it's great to see the community being so engaged. And the project has my support. Dawn Thomas, our CDA director, has been instrumental in also providing feedback, and I think we're going to break into sessions today and be as honest as you can. We'll take anything that you have to say into consideration. And thank you again for coming out tonight.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate Yvette's comments. The supervisor's right. I mean, it's really unprecedented to get 1,100 responses to the online survey, and I think that's a testament to how important this is to all of our community. So I'm glad to see everybody come out tonight. I want to thank Catherine again for spearheading. This has been a little bit of a transition for us, so we're just trying to get on board and get everything in line. So Catherine's been great in helping us get all together. Yeah, and so I'm just going to turn it over to her, but thank you for coming out tonight. This is a great cause.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I'm very excited about the turnout again. I'm not surprised by the turnout because this is what Riverhead does. We have a community that really cares, and obviously everybody's very interested in what's happening in our downtown. I couldn't be more pleased with the group that we're working with. I'm going to turn it over to Barry Long in a minute. Barry, are you going to introduce your team? Or you want me? Okay. Also, I did want to mention, yes, Dawn is here, and Tracy Stark from the IDA is here, and we have Jefferson Murphy from the Planning Department and Karen Gluth from the Planning Department are here. If you guys could just give a wave. And some of the members of the Downtown Committee are here. If they could just stand up and wave a minute. Aren't you glad I'm here? The Downtown Revitalization Committee, which is a committee made up of community members, are the group that brought the idea of the pattern book to us, and I couldn't be more pleased that we are working with UDA, and I don't want to take any of their time, so without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Barry. Wait, one more thing.
Tomorrow we have a press conference at 40 Peconic Avenue. It concerns downtown, how it's going to be revitalized. We're taking what's called a business model, which is a public-private approach. It's a very good business model. It hasn't been used here in Riverhead. We're excited about it. We have some very solid developments, and it'll be released tomorrow, again, 2 o'clock, 40 Peconic Avenue, and there'll be refreshments afterwards, and I hope that as many of you who can be there will be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the supervisor and the council members. We said this earlier in a working session at council, appreciate how engaged they've been in the process, all of the council members and the supervisor, and how they've helped publicize the process, which has led to a great response, especially for folks that can't necessarily come out to a meeting the night before Valentine's Day, which we all appreciate your doing. But as Catherine Kent said, I'm Barry Long. I'm a principal with UDA. We are working in support of the town on the downtown pattern book, and I'll explain what that is. in just a couple minutes. And with me tonight, we have Patrick Brunner, our project manager, and Tara O'Brien in the back there. They'll be facilitators at the end of the meeting, so you'll probably get to meet them directly. It may have started in the spring, but that was actually when the request was issued for consultants. But we really got started in the September, October timeframe when we were here. And there's some new faces in the room, but many of you came to the first community meeting we had in October. We have new members of council, a new member of council, new supervisor, and we felt that it was important to get them engaged in the process and allow them to have input. So we really ramped back up in January, although we've been working continuously since the first time we were here. And the process from here to the finish line is going to move along relatively quickly, we hope. Can everybody hear me okay? I have a hard time. Is it all right? We've had so many stakeholder meetings, I'm getting laryngitis just from talking too much. My wife will appreciate tomorrow. So what we'd like to do tonight is walk you through a recap of the discussion that we've been having. We'll explain that in a minute. And then at the end of the meeting, the most important part is we want to hear from you again. And rather than meeting at tables, if you were here in the last meeting, like we did the last time and having a broad discussion, this time we're going to invite you to come up to the boards that some of you have previewed, but everyone will get to see them and give us comments on specific things that we need additional input on. This isn't even close to the total scope of what we're working on, but what we have found is that there's broad consensus around quite a few issues, like addressing the flooding problem downtown. So we're not going to ask you again, should we do it, because the response has been so overwhelming, yes, that we feel like we've kind of covered that issue. So we're going to try to use your time judiciously tonight and get input on particular things that we want to hear from you on. So without further delay, we're going to run through the presentation, and then we'll do a breakout session. So tonight, we're going to give you a brief overview of what this process is all about, then talk about community feedback to date. And that's what we've heard from you in an online survey, preliminary suggestions and questions, which is what these boards represent. And then we're going to do the preference survey where you get up and have an opportunity to express your preference directly. It's not a vote, but it's an opportunity for you to express your preference so we can document that, include it in the pattern book appendices, and it'll go directly to the elected officials before they make a decision on anything. There has been some confusion about what this process's boundary is versus other studies that are going on. So the blue area here is the downtown pattern book study area. That's what we're talking about tonight. There's another study going on in the train station area. It's a transit-oriented development study. That's being done by Nelson Pope Voorhees, another consultant, through a parallel process. We're coordinating with them, but we're not overlapping boundaries. And both of these studies are going to snap like puzzle pieces into the comprehensive plan update process that's being done by a third consulting firm. And that process is going to take about 2 years. This process is going to take about another 6 weeks. So it was important to get out ahead of some of the development pressures in downtown and around the train station while the market's good. So there's 3 concurrent studies, just for clarity. And again, our boundary is along the river and involves primarily Main Street from the hotel down to the community garden, roughly. That's what you can see here. If you want to go to the next one. And the reason this boundary is defined that way is there's a downtown central business district zoning, which is in the blue here, and our boundary roughly follows that. That's how it's set. We didn't set that boundary, the town did, and if there's any confusion about it, we're sorry, but that's how this definition of downtown came to be. Others have other definitions. So where we are in the planning process, we were here again in October for the first set of meetings with stakeholders. We had a community meeting here, and we've been conducting an online survey. As the supervisor said, that's going to run till 5 p.m. tomorrow. You can have access to that through the town's website. So far, we've had over 1,100 responses to that survey. what we're working on this week is follow-up meetings with our stakeholders, community meeting number 2, that's what this is. And as follow-up to this, there'll be an online survey based on what we hear to ask you more questions, and we invite you to participate in that. It will be advertised like the last survey was through the town and the local newspapers. And then next month, late next month, we'll move on to deciding. And that next survey should come out, we hope, in early March. We've been asked who have we met with. We met with a lot of folks, and you can see them listed here: the Ag Advisory Committee and Farmland Preservation Committee, the Architecture Review Board, the BAC, BID, business owners, council members and supervisors. Today we had a working session with all of them that was publicly broadcast. Downtown Revitalization Committee, East End Arts, Environmental Advisory Committee, Landmarks Preservation, Farm Bureau representatives, Open Space Committee, Park District Advisory Committee, Riverhead Community Development Director, residents, and the Zoning Appeals Board. And many of them we met with twice in October and again this week. So you can see why we're beginning to get a little bit of laryngitis there. But so what is a pattern book? The Downtown Riverhood Pattern Book will guide the development of future community character for the Main Street area. And the key principles are that it's community-driven, based on resident involvement, and locally controlled. So you need to understand, we're here to work in support of the town. They're our client. We aren't out in front making recommendations without consulting with others. And in support of this, as we just said, we're gathering information from stakeholders and the community. So what are the elements of a pattern book? The way our final report will work is we'll be making recommendations on local policy issues like parking, flooding, and land use, guidelines for the public areas, streets, parks, squares, passages, alleys, and safety, and then guidelines for private development, building scale, massing, height, setbacks, materials, uses, and possibly architectural style. So there's a lot to be discussed, but at the end of the day, it will go back to council because they are the ultimate decision makers. I should also say, if you're interested, tonight's meeting is being videotaped. I am, and this presentation, and it will be available online if you missed anything or want to review it. As is still, I believe, the last public meeting is available through the town's website online. So these are examples of the things that we're looking at related to policy issues. Guidelines for public areas, like the public sidewalks would be an example, and guidelines for private development, such as buildings. So this is your chance to talk about the future. That's what we said when we were here in October. That's what we said in the online survey. And we received a tremendous amount of feedback. So in our last meeting here, we talked to you about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We asked you about them. And you, the residents in the community, told us where your priorities were. We have long lists of literally thousands of items. And went back to our office and organized those. So the top 20 strengths are listed here, but we've broken out the top 10 so that you can read them more easily. And I'll just go through the top 5. But special events, theaters, restaurants, architectural character, and the Peconic waterfront ranked as the top 5 strengths in the community meeting that we had before, after all the input was tallied. However, there's a much longer list of all the strengths, and we're going to make this available through the town's website too. So if you're interested and you want to bore down on that, make sure that you check that out. Highlighted here is the Peconic waterfront. In the online survey right now, and it's not finished yet, so we don't want to report all the findings, but as of today, the Peconic waterfront actually is listed as the #1 strength in the online survey, which is interesting. So we're getting input from different sources, and the ranking is coming out a little bit differently. But from our standpoint, that doesn't mean that all of these things aren't important, or one is more important than the other, one source of input. So we also asked you to put dots on drawings to indicate on the plan, to indicate these strengths. Long Island Aquarium, received a number of dots, as did other anchors like the Suffolk Theater or the Science Center and the riverfront. Under the weaknesses, the safety and perception of safety seems to always be, in the surveys we've done, close to the top, followed by traffic, the current zoning regulations, perceived lack of parking, and vacancies. In the online survey, vacancies right now is tracking, vacant storefronts is tracking as the number one weakness downtown. And you can see here how the dots got clustered. There's some issues in the single-family homes related to crime, and that was what we were told those dots represented. The new building that's being built downtown in the vacant lot next door, the vacant buildings in the center of Main Street, and this intersection, which I don't think we can fix, of Peconic Ave and East Main, which everybody complains about. We've looked at it, but we don't have a magic solution. That's kind of an historic mess there. So I guess we're going to say you have to be patient if you decide to go through that intersection. Under opportunities, riverfront development, town square or park, a small local business growth, increased multifamily units, and improved streetscapes. In the online survey, small and local business growth is number one right now. And you can see how that pattern evolves. So under opportunities, folks see these vacant buildings in the center of town as across from the Suffolk Theater as a tremendous opportunity. And then finally, under threats, flooding, a lack of police presence and safety, the downsizing or changing of the current zoning, parking supply is not adequate, and affordable housing does not support retail. This issue of lack of police presence and safety is ranking number one online with the 1,100 responses. And you can see this pattern. A lot of threats, perceived threats along the river, and most of those related to flooding. So it depends on how much patience you have, but if you want to drill way down into that information, we're happy to have you do it, because that's what we do. But we really appreciate all the input that we've gotten, and this helps to inform the menu of things that we're going to be addressing in the pattern book. It came directly out of what we heard from the community, not preconceptions that we brought. We wanted to show you in the online survey, this reports out in a different format, just a few things to give you a heads up about what we've heard. But again, it's open, so these numbers could change, but we think that we're close to the end because we're only a day away. It's been up for a couple weeks. Which of the following best describes your relationship to downtown? We asked folks to check all that applied, but 75% were a resident of the town of Riverhead. So that was the vast majority. Some folks were also residents of downtown, business owners, but most of the respondents to that survey said they were residents of the town of Riverhead. If you live outside of downtown, which hamlet do you live in? Riverhead Hamlet was 25% of the respondents, so that was the most. But all of the hamlets are represented, which we thought was interesting. And then if you attended one or more public engagement sessions or a stakeholder meeting concerning the Downtown Riverhead Pattern Book, 85% of the folks that responded online, we've never met. They've never come to a meeting here. We haven't met them in a stakeholder meeting. We were a little surprised by that, but that means that new folks are able to have input into the process that might not typically participate, and we're excited about that. We're not sure who's not sure if they attended a meeting. If you're not sure if you attended a meeting, we may be reaching out to you, but that was a 1.5%. We're not sure if they attended a meeting. Does downtown Riverhead need more public open space, and if so, what type? This was an interesting result where so far it's been tracking that the waterfront park, 65% of respondents said that the waterfront park needed to be expanded. And over half indicated that the town square was important, which is interesting because, and we'll be talking about this, the town square has a grant to get the process started for creating a downtown social space. Trails also were flagged about 30% of the respondents as important. What types of uses are missing from downtown? Retail, that green bar up at the top was number one. Folks said retail's missing. We've been talking about this with the folks we've been meeting with in stakeholder groups. It's also the toughest thing for any town right now is to get retail, the economics of traditional retail to work. Entertainment, mostly nighttime entertainment, was number two. You have great entertainment anchors already, remarkable actually for your town your size, like the aquarium or the Suffolk Theater or the Science Center. Most downtowns don't have that, but that's a very important thing for a healthy downtown, so that gets a big thumbs up. We could work on nighttime entertainment, but what you have is pretty good. Parking, folks say there's, again, not enough parking. Open space is another thing folks say are missing. Food and beverage, and cultural uses and trails, and residential is the little tan bar. Does downtown Riverhead have any issues related to parking, and if so, what specific problems exist? 55% of respondents said that there's not enough parking. And this makes us believe that most folks tried to come downtown and perceive there's not enough parking at some time. So we do think that the survey is drawing primarily local responses. There are 26 or 25 questions on that survey, so we just gave you a sample of a few. But we're going to post a survey online, the results, after we get them in to summarize. So if you're interested in seeing the outcome from the more specific questions that were asked, or if you haven't taken the survey, please, again, go to the town's website. So we have, I hate text slides, I have to be honest. We have too many in the front end of this show, but I'm not going to go through all of these. But the way the pattern book is breaking out, like we said before, we're dealing with policy issues, guidelines for the public areas, and then guidelines for private development. And this is kind of an outline of the things we're going to be addressing in the pattern book holistically. But tonight we're going to ask for input from you on a few specific things, which we still have questions about, where maybe the data and the input don't match up. Things like parking. Or we want to talk to you about the mix of uses, although we think we got fairly clear input on that. We want additional comments. Also, under the guidelines for public areas, pedestrian-friendly streets and pedestrian-friendly passages, and the town square, we'd like input from you on those things. And then under the guidelines for private development, this is probably the area where we don't have consensus right now, and we need your help. Sometimes in these processes we can get lost. It's easy to get lost, especially with all this data. I don't know how people who just crunch numbers can really see the forest for the trees, but we don't want to get lost. So we have to ask ourselves, what makes a great downtown? And always come back to this issue, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to create a pattern book or just do an exercise. We're trying to create a great downtown. And you have a great downtown, but there are opportunities to make it even better. So the weaknesses that we've discussed and were identified are important. Things like the perception of safety or the vacancies or too much traffic. But we don't typically sit at our kitchen table and say, hey, there's not too much traffic downtown, I'm going downtown because there's not too much traffic. Or the issue of parking, hey, let's go downtown because there's adequate parking. That's not how the process works, or the perception of safety. Hey, my perception of downtown is that it's safe, let's go downtown. But these can be deterrents to go downtown. And that's what the issue is when we talk about these things. The town does need to address these weaknesses because they can be barriers. But it's not what makes downtown great in and of itself. I mean, we could have a sea of parking, but it doesn't make a great downtown. So just a few of the differentiators, and there are more, which do make great downtowns, are strong local entertainment, retail, and food and beverage, so restaurant focus. That's important. So we've attempted in our time here to eat our way from one end of Main Street to the other. There may be a restaurant or two we haven't hit, but we're doing a pretty good job. You're doing really well on the local food and beverage. And we talked about the entertainment uses. You have things other towns don't have. That's important. Having downtown be distinctive, a unique place is important. Retail, we're a little skinny on. You have some real interesting things, but every town is struggling with that, so that's something to work on. People living or staying within walking distance of downtown. Some folks have said we need just a ton of more downtown housing, but we have to be careful to not just build housing and say that makes a great downtown. Housing in and of itself doesn't. You know, if all you build is housing and it's like a residential subdivision, that doesn't make a great downtown or make us want to go there. What's important about housing, though, is it provides people on the streets. And downtown and its architecture and landscape is like a stage set for life to happen. But you've got to populate the stage set to have it be interesting. And that's what activity creates, and downtown living is an important part of that. Public gathering spaces, not great here. The initiative to create the new town square is addressing that, and we think that's fantastic. Retail beautification, we're going to get into this. We're a little skinny on that. The storefronts are not as compelling, let's say, as they could be. Activities and entertainment to bring the street to life. You have a lot of programming and festivals and events, or some, but there's an aspiration to have a lot more. The online survey said 80% of respondents said we need more. And finally, focusing on activities which are really experiences, not buildings. And this is really where the rubber meets the road. You're really all experts in the design of downtown, because great downtowns invite us because it's a great experience. So when you're walking down the street, if let's say you're walking by a restaurant and you look inside and folks are dining and the window's open and you hear music, it can be a great experience. And we're all experts in that. You're experts as much as we are in that. However, if you're walking by a vacant storefront which has the paper that's covering the windows that's not permitted even by your zoning ordinance today, ripped, and you're looking inside and there's a little bit of trash outside and it just feels vacant and dead, like a dead zone, that's not a great experience. Or walking behind the buildings on the south side of Main Street. We did that yesterday. And seeing the dumpsters not screened and stacked pallets, and it's not a great experience. So this issue of trying to make the whole downtown a great experience is where we're headed. We have to be really careful. It's not just about building stuff or fixing the weaknesses. We're trying to curate great experiences. That's what makes great downtowns. So what makes a great downtown? Great experiences. Unfortunately, everybody here is an expert in that. One of the challenges is we use zoning and public policy, which is like a sledgehammer, to try to create great experiences, and there's a disconnect, let's be honest about it. But this process is trying to work to illustrate zoning and get over that hurdle. So this is kind of a shocker, but one thing that we did look at is the projections for where the shoreline is going to be related to flooding in 30 years and then at 2100 here. So if you know downtown, the shoreline is here today. So this is not a flood event, this is just high tide. So with 1 foot of sea level rise, that's where it's projected to be in 30 years. And by 2100, with another foot of sea level rise, you can see, it's up around some of the buildings. It's important to get out of this issue, or our arms around this issue, because we don't want to invest a ton of money and then have this happen. Is this fixable? We believe it is. But the town is and needs to work with the Army Corps right now on a strategy. Because you got about 20 years to get it figured out and fixed, and that's going to take some other people's money, like other towns on Long Island and on the coast in the U.S. and in other countries, to plan for sea level rise. We're not working for Southampton, but they're in worse shape on the other side, you can see. At least all your buildings are still just at high tide dry. But this doesn't even anticipate a storm event. You know what happens when that happens. So we don't have a solution. We're not hydrologists, but it's an important thing to not overlook. We can't just look to the future without future-proofing the future. Another issue is the amount of impervious surface, like asphalt and buildings you have downtown, because all the water is trying to drain into the Peconic. So today, there's about 8 inches of water sitting down in here, and it's not river flooding. It's flooding because of that, because water can't get to the Peconic. We need to make the buildings and the parking lots here and the terraces more spongy, so they absorb more water, at least hold it or release it more slowly. This is like a lot of towns, and a lot of towns are dealing with this right now, but you have too much impervious surface, and we can tell you that today, so it's going to create a secondary flooding issue, which we have to address. Okay, some of the things that are challenges beyond what makes downtown great as an experience is what may be a barrier to coming downtown. As you saw, just by a show of hands, who thinks downtown doesn't have enough parking? Don't be shy, the lights are down. All right, so it's still, running at more than half the folks feel there's not enough parking. What the 2016 parking study, the BOA study said, and now there's another study that's just about to be released by the town, that they've had another consultant, not us, working on. We don't know the final results of that study, but based on what we do know, there's some things related to parking which need to be addressed before we build additional parking. Because we can say definitively, you have a parking management problem, even more than a parking problem. Your parking is not managed. What does that mean? That means that long-term parkers are parking in the best spaces, which should be parked in by short-term parkers. The parking needs to be signed and reorganized. Another thing is it needs to be enforced, so that long-term parkers who think they can park in short-term parking are not allowed to. That's a critical part of managing your parking reservoir. As new residential buildings are built, we also need to realize that some of their parking requirement is an overlap with existing uses. So either they have to build some parking or pay a fee to not have to build parking into the parking district so their parking is accounted for. Those are choices developers like to make. But it has to be accounted for somewhere. And then finally, there needs to be improvements to transit. Because the numbers say the parking is about 58% utilized. That's not close to full. But where you guys want to park seems to be 100% utilized. So that's where our disconnect is. But the town is actively working on this issue. And again, there's going to be recommendations coming out shortly on a 2-year study they've been doing. At some point, we may need to build a parking structure, or maybe even 2. It's hard to say. But to get those funded, we have to better utilize what you have. And we're not there yet, but we are cognizant of the fact that someday you may need to build structured parking to supplement what you have, and that's a good thing when you get there. However, if you think we're wrong, that's why we have these boards set up tonight. You can tell us we're wrong and know there's not enough parking, and why. On the proposed mix of uses downtown, this is in colors the mix of what you have today, and that pattern for us is very healthy. That's a sign of a pretty healthy downtown. It has a lot of good things going on. The challenge is it's got some dead zones, though, where you have all these vacancies in the middle. That's not good. All this gray stuff. Big vacant lot, and this is right on either side of East End Arts. The experience of being downtown sort of falls apart in that area, and that's not going to cut it. You also have some good clusters for the aquarium, and again, the Vail Levitt, and the theater, and good restaurant clusters. That's a nice spacing. But we don't have a complete experience yet downtown. We want to ask you in these breakout sessions about housing tonight, because about half the folks that responded to the survey said there shouldn't be any more housing downtown, which was shocking to us. But and then they said of what you would like to see, you'd like to see market rate for sale, followed by market rate rental, and then affordable below that. Well, we want to have you talk to us about this issue of we don't want more housing downtown. We want to know, does it have to do with adding more kids to the school system, or do you really think housing's just not appropriate downtown? So please weigh in on that. In the public realm, we want to ask you about the speed of traffic on Main Street and whether or not the town should actively work with the state to calm down the speed where you don't think it's an issue. We're also going to ask you about the pedestrian environment, and there's a series of recommendations on the boards over here about things that we could do to bump out the curbs and narrow the distance pedestrians have to go across a mid-block crossing, or to take parking spaces and turn them into temporary parks, or to take striped areas which aren't being utilized by anybody and possibly landscape them to make it more pedestrian friendly. And there's other things on the board, but we want to hear from you. Is this a good idea, and should this be a focus? When we talk about experiences, for all of us, we can identify with walking down the sidewalks on main streets and other towns' main streets. And the way we look at downtowns is you got a clear pedestrian zone. You need that where pedestrians can walk. But there's really two other parts of Main Street sidewalks, whether they're narrow or wide: the amenity zone and the marketing zone. And a lot of your downtown, from an experiential standpoint, is just that clear zone. You got a lot of clear zone. You could handle a lot of people downtown in your clear zone because there's not much in it but pedestrians. But from an experiential standpoint, typically what you want to see is that area populated. It could be by planters or banners. It might be by benches, but if they're an issue, it could be by bike racks or other kinds of furnishing which don't encourage people to sit and stay. And in the marketing zone, this is the zone that we like to see the tenants take over and populate, again, with landscaping or potentially outdoor seating, and amenities like awnings or blade signs, which are not permitted today, just to animate it. There are a lot of things you could do, and we've made a lot of suggestions on the boards over here. But we want to help transform this pedestrian experience so that it feels much better. It's an experience that you want to come downtown for because it's unique. The same thing with the passages. We have one good passage where the sushi restaurant is. The rest of them are kind of dark, and there's not really much reason to go down them but to get from parking to Main Street. So the passages need to be more pedestrian friendly. That could involve lighting or wayfinding signage or landscaping or murals or building entrances. We have, again, a whole menu over here. We want to know if you think this is a good idea or not. Where should the town be focusing its attention? Parks and open space. We don't know where the town square is going to go right now. We didn't do this drawing. This came from the press release, but the town square is anticipated behind the vacant buildings on Main Street down in this area, but there may be other opportunities. Don Thomas, the Community Development Director, is going to be staffing that board. And we'd like to hear from you about what you'd like to see the new town square become. Because these ideas are just being hatched, and we'd like to hear from the community. Public safety. We're very high on that priority list as something that needs to be addressed. The top things that we would recommend, and your supervisor has a PhD in this, literally. So she is the expert, the new supervisor. But increased level of lighting. Lighting downtown experientially is not where it should be, number one. Cameras, security cameras, number two. Advertising that you have security cameras in a nice way, like a smiley face that says, "Smile, you're on candid camera." And then better maintenance is number four. Those are actually all things that the community listed through the survey as the top things they'd like to see done to improve security. But it matches up with crime prevention through environmental design principles. Are those things a good idea? We're going to let you weigh in and tell us. And we're just about to the end here. So the character development is a hot topic. 75% of respondents to the online survey so far have said that there needs to be more design control of the buildings downtown. When we dissected your town and looked at, these are just buildings that are standing today, what was built in what period, what we found was, before 1900, you had homes and the churches and small shops with an apartment above a small store. In the 1900s to the 1950s, we got institutions like the Suffolk Theater and bigger mixed-use buildings that had more retail. And downtown really was becoming the center of commerce. In the 1950s, after World War II, up to 2000, that's when you saw department stores developed, like Woolworths, for example. These bigger boxes came into downtown. But we also know by the mid to late 1960s, those uses started to move out to the mall or outside of town. It happened later here in Riverhead, but it has happened everywhere. And in each of these periods, you see buildings that were contemporary, meaning of their time when they were built. So we have very traditional architecture here. We have, like the Suffolk Theater is a more modern architectural style for its time. By the time we got to the department store period, they're all building their standard department store they're building on every main street. A lot of them were Art Deco or other styles, but it was a change. They were disruptive at the time they were built. And then in the last 20 years, we've gotten modern buildings. We've gotten buildings that have tried to be sympathetic to what's next door, either in the articulation of windows or in the way that materials were handled and scale. You have a very eclectic downtown, that's what we would say. You know, it's authentic and it's unique because in each of these periods, the buildings that were built were just of their time. And honestly, there was no architectural review board or any design control until someplace very close to the last 20 years. So we'd like to hear from you about this, more about what kind of controls you think there should be. Because honestly, what we've observed is that over time, the buildings have always been of their time. And in addition to a great experience downtown, you want an authentic experience. It wants to be different than other places. So we come downtown for a great experience, but it's not the mall, and it's not 58. It's a unique experience, and it's uniquely, in this case, Riverhead. So we need you to weigh in. All right, and just wrapping up here, and then we're going to get to our breakout session. So we did a square footage comparison in these diagrams of what's permitted to be built downtown today. And these would be looking at buildings from the side and how much could we stack up. So in very simple terms, developers love this diagram, but we have a little street tree, and on downtown lots, today you're allowed to build out 80% of the lot. The last 20% has to be open space. And you're allowed to go 5 stories high. And you're allowed to fill up that entire box. And literally it's a box with square footage. That's what's permitted today. But we've heard complaints about the 5-story buildings, especially on the south side of Main Street, that they create a wall and shade the street. We did look at some other options. The second one just took the top floor off and said, well, maybe it's not bad to cover the lot 100% like we used to do in the old days here. You could do a 4-story building and get the same number of quarters, but the building's shorter, but from a developer standpoint, maybe it has close to the same value because you can put the same amount of stuff in the box. Should we look at that? If we did, we'd require a green roof or something, this building to have a spongy quality. But with a new town square, we think that's an offset for having to build a lot of open space on each lot. We looked further and said, well, maybe this is too much stuff. What if we reduce the amount of stuff? And instead of getting $5 worth of quarters, you only got $3.75. So it reduces the amount of square footage you can build. And when that happens, you can see from a developer standpoint, if they go by current zoning and you reduce the amount of stuff, they don't perceive as much value. But maybe you tell us that's where the balance point should be. And then we looked at what if we only permitted 3-story buildings with the current 80% lot coverage, then what happens? And you can see in this example, you're from $5 of value from a developer standpoint down to $3 of value. Is this the most important thing? No. Is it important that there be some balance between economics and aesthetics and experiences? Yes. And we have to find that point. But we've done some diagrams to illustrate this, and tonight we're going to ask you for feedback, because this is one of these sticky issues that we don't have a solution for right now. So this is a generic building, and we've done it just like those diagrams, 4 different ways. This is a typical lot downtown. It's 60 feet wide by 200 feet deep, and this is what you're permitted to build, a 5-story building right up pretty much on the property line, covering 80% of the lot. So that's that first $5 alternative. This is the second one, where you still get $5 worth of building, but it's 20% longer and it covers the whole site, but it has green roof mandated, we'll say. And also, on Main Street, it suggests an 8-foot setback. Costs you a little square footage, but you can see how it changes the scale of the experience on Main Street. So we're a pedestrian standing over on the opposite side of Main, we'll say, looking at this hypothetical building. So can you go back one, Patrick? So again, what zoning permits, and what happens if you allow 100% coverage but only 4 stories? You get the same size building. It just has a completely different look to it. But the architecture, everything is the same. Another thing we're considering is, should we require developers to build to the property line and keep the sidewalks narrow, or should we encourage them to push back maybe 2 or 3 feet in places to allow more outdoor amenity in that marketing zone? And our feeling is you probably should encourage that, but you shouldn't dictate it, because you want to maintain some continuity. So maybe where the corner of a building comes out to the street, that's fine. But you want a place where you can amenitize. This is that third alternative, which reduces what you can build. And you can see here, this looks like a 3-story building for the most part, because you don't have enough stuff to put up on the 3rd floor to fill it up. So it has a little small piece of 3rd floor on this building. And then in the last one, with the 3-story, $3 example, this is what a 3-story building would look like. So a lot of folks have said, wow, that looks great aesthetically. The issue here is, have you taken away too much from what you can build today to make it economically feasible? We can't say, but we'd like to hear from you. And then just wrapping up, we'd also like to hear, do you like the idea of a setback where the building steps at the upper floor? Should that be required? Some kind of a setback above 3 stories. And do you feel it's the same way on both sides of Main Street? Should it be north and south, or just on the south side, on the riverside? And also, where we have freestanding historic buildings like the churches, should there be a setback? If you have questions about this, Patrick's going to be at that table and he can explain that. And then our last question is going to be about sites like East End Arts, where we have freestanding historic buildings. As the sites next to them get redeveloped, should we allow those historic buildings to be seen by requiring a special setback? Landmarks asked this question. And the Architectural Review Board, we'd like to hear from you. Wow. So that was a lot of stuff, or it seemed like a lot of stuff. But you can kind of see, and I'd just like to close before we do our breakout session by saying that we really would challenge you to think about this in terms of what you're experts in, which is the experience. And it's experiential, whether you're overcoming a barrier to coming downtown, like the appearance of the vacancies or the parking, or experientially when you're walking down the street, what's missing? What would make your experience better? Because if it makes your experience better, it's likely to make another visitor or a resident's experience better. So what I'd like to do before we ask folks to get up is have our facilitators go to their respective boards, make sure we have them all covered. We want to thank our facilitators. We are using your neighbors and potentially people you know locally as facilitators, and we like to do that because this is a conversation. Sometimes a facilitator will leave and get on their cell phone, and then we have an uncovered board. So it happens every time. Like the planning director right there. I'm looking for Jeff Murphy. Oh, he's counting his dots. How are we doing? Have we got somebody at every? We've got 2, 1, 1, 1. Covered here, we're covered there. I'm going to do that. Patrick's going to do those 2.
Mary, are we going to come back to the big group again like we did last time?
We're not. So
Okay.
here's how this is going to work. We're going to make it easier than last time on all of you. What we're going to do, instead of coming back and looking at each board, to give everybody as much time or as little time as they want, we're going to ask you to circulate. If you don't want to talk to the facilitator, that's fine. There's a paragraph or a few sentences of text on the board. It makes a statement or a
If you agree with all of those. There you go. Well, I'm going to put it right next to you. We can play tic-tac-toe later. We agree with both of those. Yep.
We have split mixed land uses.
I'll have a green dot on that, please. Yep. I'm sorry? I'll tell you. Put a green dot right there for me. Oh, very good. Thank you. This is one of the ones where you're probably going to need more than one green and red dot. because
So I
agree
have
with two
plenty,
and disagree with two.
plenty of red and green dots. How are you
I'll
tonight?
take 2 greens and 2 reds.
You can take whatever you like, and I'll take
Okay, thank you.
You're a dot hog.
A little, Angela, not much has changed, as you know. Not much
And you're
has
also
changed.
welcome to write a note if you have any
Thank
comments.
you. Mark it right?
Or the town should work with the New York State DOT and the police department on calming this New York traffic.
I live down here.
But if you have some specific comment about, you know, maybe the traffic signal needs to be timed better or something, you can put that on the sticky note.
Well, people don't know. That's for sure.
Whatever you feel, you can put on the sticky note.
I'll block the box.
Yeah, no, listen.
That's a good comment. Good comment.
They didn't give me. I'm down there all the time. Other people have more dots.
Would you like some negative?
That actually helps comfort.
Are you the keeper of the dots, Steve?
Yes, I
Could I
am.
have a couple of green ones, please? Thank you. I need another one.
Also a good thing to put where they said there were issues in the residential areas, because there have been studies where when they planted trees on all those streets where they had
I'm getting a break. I'm in the middle. Everybody's coming out from the ends. Oh, well, this is simply a demonstration of various alternatives for somehow managing the environment of these existing walkways between buildings. Primarily running it from Main Street either to the river or alternatively to the parking lots on the north side of Main Street as well. And these are just some suggestions.
Tom, how are you, buddy? Good to see you, as always.
These could also be amended, of course, if in fact these buildings were to be purchased and redeveloped. So there could be an entirely new
Thing back here, we own this little thing here, and we own this. So we're hoping to try to work on acquiring some of these and make it connected this way instead. More.
So that is this, right? The way that is.
That would be more waterfront, yeah. Yeah, but then you could like both, and I think you said you like both ideas, right?
That's my idea. That's that space.
Yeah.
And you do this, and then
And also,
make a marina here.
this isn't for sale.
Condemn it, like David Cabell
So,
did.
but if it's $5 million to condemn it, you're talking about the cost becomes exponentially greater. So, and that's just an absolutely difficult thing that we really just don't have the resources to do right now. But at some point, we might be able to do
This
the
was
same
my
idea.
solution for flooding.
Are you green, purple, red? So, I'll return my green.
right on this one. But I just don't want anybody tearing down historic buildings. Like I was very happy when
Smaller.
I was. You keep getting me. I was very happy when Preston House was saved, and then the building next door to Preston House that's being redone. We all fought for that. Those of us that live down.
I agree. I mean,
It would be a down zoning.
And they would not sue the town. The people that have purchased it with existing zoning that you're reducing. I think the word might is wrong. I think the word is definitely. They will definitely sue because you've reduced their investment.
Well, that's why we showed the quarters, because from a value standpoint, these you get the same amount of square footage on both of these alternatives.
But not those.
This is smaller and this is even smaller. So
That's
this is
a
only
40% reduction.
yes, comments under the other comments on parking on the online
Because
survey.
this is an older community. The young people are just going to float around here. The older people.
It gives us direction for going forward with the parking, so at least it gives us a heads up of where people's minds are.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. This is my
that and the theory is this is my
Thank you for coming tonight.
Sure, no, but it's,
Well, green is good. That means you're. So I've got the types of housing that we're looking at for downtown.
Disagreeing